Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on where you're connecting in from to listen to today's webinar. So we are proud to speak to you today regarding our latest release that is now available officially as of today, which is Storyboard 9.0. So, how you can participate today to ask your questions, you will find on the bottom of your screen a chat function or a Q&A function, which allow you to post your questions, which we will address at the end of today's session. Because we are streaming over the internet, if you do run into any audio visual kind of connections, try refreshing your window. That usually kind of resolves about 95% of the issues that people experience. Definitely, if you haven't followed us on social, give us a like. We're active on LinkedIn, so you can follow us or have a communication with us using the hashtags of GUI development or Crank Storyboard. So today's speakers, of course, we have the lead storyboard product developer, Evan, who will be giving you the technical demo and overview about Storyboard 9.0. And then, of course, there's myself, the product marketing manager here at Crank, and I will be your host for today. So what we're going to be covering off today, of course, we're going to be jumping into just, if it's your first time, joining us here at Crank, and you maybe not don't know that much about Crank or Storyboard, let's give you just a brief overview of who we are. We have a lot of other presentations and webinars that are on demand that you can join to find out a little bit greater detail. Then I will give you just a brief overview of, how those enhancements kind of come together under some kind of useful buckets that really kind of help improve your GUI development when it comes to using Storyboard. And then we'll jump into a demo of Storyboard and then address any questions you have at the end. All right, with that being said, let's jump into things. So, in case you haven't heard of Crank before this presentation, I can guarantee that probably you have interacted with a product running HMI or GUI, however you want to refer to it, that was built using our GUI development tools software, Storyboard. Definitely, our technology was developed to help make the whole process of developing GUIs a lot more efficient for the varied embedded platforms that are out there. So whether it's for traditional markets like medical, automotive, or industrial, or consumer-based markets like white goods, smart home, or IoT and wearable devices, products being developed all share a common challenge of delivering an exceptional and sophisticated user experience on the devices that you choose. So Crank is not only a software company, but we're also a services-based company as well, which means that, if you have anywhere from GUI development needs, whether it's design, whether it's development, whether it's kind of reviewing what you have, all the way to mechanical, so designing maybe some of the devices for you from a physical kind of environment or doing some reverse engineering, our services team has recently merged with Careerform Engineering to really enable you end-to-end engineering services across the board. So definitely, we're not just GUI development anymore. We can help you develop the entire product if you are, short on time and resources and are really looking for external helps. So let's jump into what Storyboard is. So definitely, well, before we jump into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the UI. So the UI and the experience it offers have quickly become the defining part of today's modern products because a product with a well-designed user interface is simply seen as better than other products that may be in the same category as the product you're releasing. Also, it makes users feel good about using the product and, of course, kind of goes back to their original choice for choosing that product over the others in the same category. And then, of course, a well-designed, thought-out UI can really help build long-term brand loyalty for your business and future products that you release. However, modern GUI development demands more than just the ability to create great-looking UIs. It requires design flexibility and the ability to easily scale to address evolving product needs. And this is where Storyboard 9 comes in. So Storyboard 9.0 refines the embedded GUI development process by unlocking new levels of design freedom and as well as UI application development efficiency and development scalability to really, it's built to help support you in developing modern UI expectations across different embedded hardware. So Storyboard 9 really empowers your development team to create sophisticated, maintainable, and visually rich UI applications without increasing development complexity or overhead. And so again, in case you are new to Crank and Storyboard, and this is the first time that you've ever heard the name Storyboard, let me quickly discuss why Storyboard is different than others on the market. So really what sets Storyboard apart from other products in the market is its unique decoupled development architecture, which was crafted by our team of seasoned software engineers to really remove the issues typically associated with traditional UI development tools. So with this distinct separation between the front-end design and the back-end logic environments, developers and designers can collaboratively work together to design, develop, enhance, and test the application without disrupting each other's processes. So really, the GUI development workflow provided is easy to use, making it quick to be adopted by all development levels, and embraces the design iteration process, saving you both valuable development time for the creation of GUI applications, but also for any enhancements that you need to make during that development process, or maybe further on down the road. So with Storyboard 9, we've kind of reimagined what it means to build embedded UIs within Storyboard by addressing the fundamental pain points that developers often face on a daily basis when building engaging embedded UIs. So the first set of enhancements really kind of fall around designing UIs without constraints. So if you, work with a design firm, or maybe you have an in-house designer that uses tools like Figma or Photoshop, definitely, at the core of Storyboard 9 is the ability for, you guys to work together closely, but more importantly, for developers like yourself to nest UI controls without limitation by removing the previous restrictions on how content is structured within the application. Of course, this unlocks greater design flexibility and control, allowing controls to be embedded at any level of the design layout tree. The end result is a cleaner, more modular layout architecture that really simplifies the design management and improves scalability. And also to support the growth for, to adopt across platform scalability, 9.0 introduces dynamic resolution handling and flexible nested scene layouts. This enables developers to, essentially design once and deploy across different devices with varied screen sizes or resolutions without having to re-architect the entire layout of every single control for each hardware configuration that you choose to deploy the UI on. And then finally, bulleted and numbered lists are now preserved when importing text into Storyboard from solutions like Figma. So previously, designs that contain special characters would import as normal text, removing the special characters altogether. Like I said, such is the case when importing a Figma file. However, now that rich text sources will show up the same in Storyboard as they were in the original design file. The next set of enhancements really kind of fall under helping you kind of really develop smarter, leaner UIs. So further enhancing the development flexibility for you is the ability to assign Lua callbacks for specific variables that need to be listened to, enabling real-time updates without constant polling. So whether they're adjusting a display based on live data feed or triggering state transitions within a device, the UI can now react when the moment it needs to. Again, design and development efficiency also extends to theming and UI customization thanks to the introduction of static data read-write via Lua. So now, you can easily dynamically modify attributes such as colors or styles without having to recreate variables for every single visual change. This leads to reduced memory usage, simplified logic, and easier implementation of brand themes or regional visual adjustments across the device portfolio. Additionally, you can now trigger actions dynamically using Lua, removing the overhead of event binding. So previously, most interactions required a queue-driven event model that could easily introduce unnecessary complexity or delays. Now that logic can be scripted and executed exactly when needed, streamlining the application flow and reducing the lagging UI behavior. And then finally, the last set of kind of major anchor and major features really kind of fall under the, faster GUI development kind of philosophy. So Storyboard 9 also introduces an overhaul to its component system to enable true development, architecting, and reuse. So now you can now structure applications with our modular widget-like components that automatically reflect updates whenever they're used across screens, within nested components, or in different layers of the UI. This drastically reduces the burden of application maintenance while accelerating the development of UI applications with a built-in comprehensive library of ready-to-deploy components. Additionally, we have further enhanced our support for Figma and importing aspects of the design into a storyboard UI. For example, designers who apply a stroke with the same color as the fill, adding texture and definition to designs can now be assured that their design will be imported correctly into Storyboard. Also, Storyboard now imports connected Figma frames as screens with built-in transition actions. And this, of course, is on top of what I previously spoke about with the bulleted and numbered lists being supported as well. And then finally, Storyboard 9 introduces full bidirectional text support, giving you greater flexibility when designing for global audiences. So with our new render extension, it's now easy to isolate and render text in both right to left and left to right orientations, something not previously supported. So this enhancement streamlines the integration of multilingual content into your UI designs, thereby enabling more dynamic and regional specific interfaces. So we did do a beta program, and so we have a tendency to do that with a lot of the releases that we've done over the last little bit, where we kind of provide whether it's our customers like yourself, maybe it's our developer like community, or through our partners to really kind of get access to some of the features of that latest release before they are introduced. What this gives us a capability is for you to kind of try it and say, hey, this is great, but if we could only did this, it'd be that much better. So really trying to either improve what we're going to be introducing with the current release or adding a backlog of features that we can add to the upcoming future releases, for in this case, maybe 9.1, 9.2. And so what you're seeing on the screen is just one of the feedbacks we got, from one of the people that were using it. And, the most exciting part there is that they felt like, now storyboard releases are becoming, more exciting than even their iPhone updates. And some of the things that I talked about today, weren't some of the things that they maybe found most useful. So things like new text carrots and alphabetized resource listings, they were really excited about because, these simple changes are really going to make it easier for their day-to-day embedded development. So with that being said, I'm going to take the opportunity now to kind of pass things over to Evan, who is going to run you through Storyboard 9 and really kind of touch upon those major and enhancements that we spoke about during it. So let me pass things over to Evan.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, I'm going to talk about some of the new features in Storyboard 9. And I'm going to start by talking about the new application model hierarchy, which introduces control nesting. So in previous versions of Storyboard, layers were restricted to having one level of groups or controls, and groups were restricted to having one level of controls, and then that was pretty much the end of the scene. Some challenges with this is that it restricted how you lay out your render extensions, with some controls being cluttered with many render extensions or some groups being cluttered with many controls otherwise. It also conflicts with other design tools like Photoshop and Figma, who already allow a more free-flowing design with fewer restrictions like this. Storyboard 9 deprecates groups and introduces the ability to add a control as a child of another control, which opens up a lot of design potential for differently organized designs, and manages more complex designs a bit better. And then this also means it's more aligned with those external tools, and it makes your imports from them look more closely or align more closely with the initial design. So you can see here, my application has many controls, and those controls themselves have many controls, and they're just organized a lot better. Those controls within controls means that all these different components can be separated much more neatly. Another benefit of this, so a control parent can function the same way that groups used to, but because it's also a control itself, that means it has the benefits or all the features of a control, and in particular, it means you can add a render extension to it. So if you want to add some kind of background rendering to a group of controls, you can simply add a render extension to their parent, and that will be propagated exactly how you want it to, as opposed to before where you would have had to add a new control, made sure that control was lined up perfectly with your group, and then you'd also have to tie the alignment in any animations and make sure they're all rendered properly. But now you can just add something to the parent control, and that'll just propagate nicely, exactly as you expect. So this is very useful for things like drop shadow effects or blurs, or other kind of background effects. It's useful for that. And it also helps enable the next thing I want to talk about, which is application scalability. So if we take a look at the properties view, we can see there are a few new properties for every control. So we have the scale and the anchor. The scale value allows you to define a dimension of a control or layer as being relative to the value of its parent. And the anchor value lets you define the point within the control from which that dimension will originate. So if we take a look at an example here, I have this header layer, and I want to make sure that all the controls inside this header layer are vertically centered, no matter what the size of the header layer is. So you can see I've anchored my control to be vertically centered, which sets this 0.5. And he's fine to be anchored on the left, but we want to also make sure that we have a bit of space from the left edge of the screen. So we apply a fixed offset of 20 to the X value. And similarly, on the right, we're centered vertically, but we want to make sure we're anchored to the right side this time, which sets the scale value to 1. But again, making sure that we have a bit of space from the edge of the screen, we have a fixed offset of -20 applied. To be clear, the scale values from 0 to 1 represent 0% to 100% of the parent value. So it is possible, if you want to define your scale as being outside of that boundary. You could define your scale to be negative, or you could choose, if you want your control to be greater than 100% of the dimension of its parent, it's possible to use values greater than 1. But that's kind of the range you're looking at. And you can be as granular as you like. You don't have to round or anything. But yeah, from 0 to 1 is the boundary of your parent, essentially. So if we now take a look at our header layer, so now as I change the dimensions of the header layer, you can see that the controls are following along as we've defined them. So they're going to remain vertically centered without having to change those values again. And similarly, if we update the width, the same thing. So that control on the right is going to be following along as we want it to. And if we take a look here, there's just another example of that. So we have this calendar widget, which is just completely defined by its parent layer to be centered no matter what the parent layer is. So as we adjust the parent layer, we can be sure that this control is going to remain centered within it. And so, as I was saying, the benefit of this at runtime is if we just simulate our application, take a look at our calendar here. Now, so this app is 800 by 480, but if I want to I can define another simulator configuration that will resize the app to a different size. And if we run this, we can see that, so again, without making any changes to the model, we can see that our header is configured exactly as we want it to be. Things are vertically centered. Things are in the right place. And similarly, our calendar is also centered both vertically and horizontally exactly as we want. And again, without having to make any changes to the model. Considering where we are here, looking at our components playground, maybe now is a good time to talk about the improvements to components that we've made in Storyboard 9. In Storyboard, a component is essentially a control object that is defined separately from the main model and can be reused in the application multiple times to repeat common behaviors like sliders or drop-downs and stuff like that. In Storyboard 9, we've made some adjustments to the component workflow that will help improve their usability, so I'll show that off right now. So firstly, to create a component, you just find the control that you want to turn into a component, and you're going to right-click on it and find the Create New Component option here. So you can see that we have our legacy control component wizard here. It's been marked as deprecated. You should not use this going forward. You're going to want to use the new control component wizard. And when you create your component, you're going to need to specify its name, and then you can just give it any description that you'd like. The name is important, though. Once you create a component, its name is going to become a keyword that is going to enable some of the functionality I'm about to talk about. So be careful to name your component properly, because you're not going to be able to change it after or risk breaking some of the functionality. So once you create a component, what you're going to notice in your project is that there's this new @ folder. This folder contains all of your component definitions. So you can see we just created our component, and what we have here essentially is a new project that represents the component. And this project has the model and could also contain any assets that you need for this component, like images or scripts, if you create them. Now, my component is pretty thin. So I'm going to abandon it at this point and focus on some of the other ones here that we've already created. So with the storyboard installation, it includes 15 already predefined and fully fleshed out components that you can start using and customizing if you like. So to import a component or many components into your project through the components view, if you click here, you can choose any number of them to import into your project and start using. I've already imported all of them into this project, so they're all already here. And then once you've imported them, all you need to do to use them is drag them out into the application. So when you do, you might notice that there's a little dialog that pops up that kind of shows you a little bit about this component. So this push button component, for example, has some Lua associated with it, and it points you to a function that you might need to implement just to start using your component, or some of the stuff that you need to change to customize this component for your own use. So this is just a hint, kind of a hint dialog to show you maybe what needs to be done for this push button component to work for you. But we can see there it is. I've dragged it into my app. Once you've included a component into an app, that creates a dependency in your app on this particular component. So I'll just quickly talk about those dependencies. If you go to your application, in the properties view for your application, you can see all of your component dependencies listed here in this field box. So when you create a component or when you import it through, the dependency will automatically be added here. So most likely you probably don't need to worry about it, but through here you can see which components your app currently depends on. If you want to add more, you can do so here. Or if you need to delete some because you don't actually care about them anymore, that's fine. You can do that here too. But so the way it works on export is, once you export your application, we're going to check all of your component dependencies, and it's going to pull in the model from those components and include it in your application's GAF file. And similarly, it's going to export any of the assets like the Lua scripts or the images into your exported result as well. So that process will more or less feel the exact same, and you don't really have to worry about it once you get to the runtime. So a cool thing about this dependency chain is that components can actually define other components as dependencies as well. So you can have kind of components defined within components. So for example, if you have a common sub-element that's a part of many components, what you can do is turn that sub-element into a component and then just reuse it everywhere. And this will let you further reduce duplication and take advantage of very simple, easy updates because you only have to update that one thing instead of having to update it everywhere. So a cool example of this dependency chain in our example here is the theme component. So the theme component is available in the Storyboard installation. It's part of these predefined components. And all it is just a collection of variables that define common theme elements like background colors, foreground colors, or fonts. So you can see this is my main theme component variable here. It's got all these variables that we want to define. But we've also just defined kind of preset themes. So we have a light theme and a dark theme that have their own definitions. And you could choose to define more theme presets if you would like. But using this theme component, we can demonstrate another great improvement to components, and that is how they're edited. So when you edit a component, that edit is immediately pushed to any of its dependencies all along the chain. So to other components that depend on it, and then subsequently to your main application, they will all inherit this edit immediately. So if we go back to our theme as an example, so right now I have it using the dark theme values, but if, for example, I just wanted to change this and show what it looks like in light theme, so I'm just going to make an edit here to my theme component and copy the light theme values and paste them in here. And you can see once I do that, as I've edited my theme component, all of its dependencies are inheriting those edits. So our calendar is automatically updated, and then we can also see our main application has been updated automatically as well. And you can take a look at what it looks like. So yeah, even on a smaller scale, if you ever need to tweak your components, you'll just get those live updates automatically in any of the dependencies. So it just makes it really easy to use if you've defined your components well. So sticking with the theme for a second, if we just take a look at its Lua, here, let me close out of these other files for now. Taking a look at its Lua, it comes with an easy function to change themes on the fly as necessary. So using this set theme function, you would easily be able to change between different themes. And also it provides listener functionality. So if you need to add a listener callback because you want to care about when themes change and need to respond to that, easy to do this as well. There is also a quality of life change made on the Lua side with respect to components that's worth talking about. So you can see here in my drop-down component, you're going to see a new require syntax for components. When you see the @ prefix followed by the name of a component inside a require statement, what that means is it's going to point to the scripts folder of that particular component. So the scripts folder within the theme component, which is inside your @ directory inside the project. So this just provides a shorthand to reference the different script folders of your themes. Just as an example, this is what the original statement would look like if you just used the standard syntax. It would look like this. So furthermore, if you don't specify the actual Lua name here, then we will assume that you mean the main Lua file, which is the same name as the component itself, so theme. So yeah, this will resolve to this at the end of the day. You are still welcome to use the standard syntax if that's clear to you. It'll work just fine as well. But this is just a small quality of life thing if you don't want to type quite as much. Just an easy way to reference the different scripts folders that you're working with. And similarly up here, you can see @ dropdown, which is going to reference the scripts folder of dropdown. But in this case, we don't want the main dropdown Lua file. We're actually looking for another Lua file within it. So we just need to append that other Lua file. So again, if I just write this out using the standard syntax, it would look like this. All right, so yeah, there's some of the quality of life improvements we've made for components. I definitely encourage you to check some of these out and experiment with them yourself, and just see how it can help out in your own application. All right, so I'm going to shift focus a bit and talk about some of the Lua enhancements that we've made in Storyboard 9. So we've added a few more Lua functions that are a bit more subtle, but definitely in certain scenarios can offer great improvements to both the performance of your application at runtime and also just ease of design. So I'm going to start with set property. So our calendar component has a good example of using set property. So the set property function lets you change the value of a render extension argument given the control that will call the function and the index, the z-index of that property. Change the value of an argument even if that argument does not have a variable bound to it. So when you bind a variable to a render extension property, first of all, there's a small memory cost at runtime of storing the value of this variable, and there is also a small performance cost where, because it's a variable and can theoretically be changed at any time, when a particular element is rendered, any variables need to be queried and updated in real time at the point where it's rendered to make sure that the value is correct. So what's nice about set property is it lets you change the value without the overhead of associated with having a variable bound to that render extension property. Now, just to be clear, there are scenarios for this, and there are still also scenarios where you do need to bind variables to your properties. If you have properties that are changing all the time, like, for example, properties that are animated, that are constantly changing through those animations or data changes that are being triggered on many interactions with your UI, then in cases like that, you are still going to need a variable bound to those properties, and you should be binding those variables. You should be using the existing set data and get data functions to change those variables. However, if you have properties that don't change very often, so properties that aren't a part of any animations or data changes, or aren't really affected by screen changes, for example, these properties would benefit from avoiding using these variable in favor of this new set property function. So the most common example of this is for theming. So in the case of theming, users are not changing the theme very often. So this definitely qualifies as a case where you would maybe prefer to avoid the overhead of a variable and instead just use set property to change a value whenever the theme needs to change. So looking at the function itself, like I said, you call this off of a GRE DOM control object. So given the index of the render extension you're trying to change, the name of the argument, and then the value that you want to give that argument. And furthermore, as for convenience, we've provided this GRE const table, which contains in itself tables of all arguments, or all the comment arguments, and also all the actions, which we'll get into a bit later. So through this GRE const table, I can access all of the fill arguments that I might need or want to change. So this is just an easy way to know exactly what the argument names are that you're going to want to use for your for the second argument in this function. So you can see just the fill color, the text color, rectangle color, and then the value, whatever you need it to be. And so yeah, so again, by using this instead of tying a variable in the case of theme changes, we're saving a lot of overhead at render time because we don't need to bother querying the value of a potential variable that is almost never going to change anyway. So yeah, lots of benefits there in the right situation. All right, next I'm going to talk about action trigger. So in our components playground, we have an instance of action trigger here. So the action trigger function lets you trigger an action without the need to use an event. So again, the typical workflow here is in the model, you would bind an action to a particular event, and then you would be required to send that event into the queue, wait for it to be processed, and then the processing of that event will trigger the action. However, in some cases, this is just a useful convenience item to just directly trigger an action without having to push an event into the queue. Which is maybe a tiny optimization, but really the main benefit here is just one of convenience. If you know you need to trigger an action, you can now just do it through Lua without having to make any model changes. And again, so the action trigger parameters, the first one is the action definition itself, and then the second is a table of all the arguments and whatever values you need for those arguments. And again, we have the GRE const table, which will give you the arguments of each action. So you can see all the common actions here, like animation, focus setting, and in this case, all the screen actions. So this table will provide you with all the actions that all the arguments, that this action cares about that you need to maybe set in this function. All right, so that's action trigger. Next, I'm going to talk about add data listener. So in our dropdown in the scroll bar, we can see there are a few data listeners in here. So the add data listener function lets you specify a custom Lua callback that will get invoked every time a piece of data changes. So this was already possible, again, with a little bit of model editing overhead, binding an event that would then call into Lua when this data changes. However, this is just a convenient way, without having to interact with the model directly, to just add a data listener to the callback. So given the key for that piece of data, which, I mean, in here, we're just using a variable. But as an example, what we're looking for there is, if we look for a variable here, we're looking for the path of the variable that you get from copy path here. That's what we're looking for as the key argument for these parameters. And then the second parameter being the definition of the Lua callback. So in this case, we just want to update the offset every time it changes. So yeah, just a simple quality of life improvement there. And then lastly, if we go back to calendar, I'll talk about a couple more GRE DOM improvements as well. So a GRE DOM control object, in addition to the set property function that we already talked about, there are a couple of other useful quality of life improvements that we've made here in the form of get parent and get child. So given the name of a child control, you can now easily just query for that child in the control, whereas before what you would have had to do is use get children, which would then, you would need to iterate through all the children to actually find the one you want. So this cuts down on a bit of iteration and just keeps your Lua code a little cleaner. And then similarly, we have get parent, which returns the parent control or of this control. Again, just to make it a bit easier to navigate up and down your model using the GUI DOM. All right, so yeah, those are a few of the Lua improvements that will help you in your development as well. And finally, I'm going to talk about our new bidirectional text support in Storyboard 9. So historically, Storyboard has supported text shaping for certain right-to-left fonts like Arabic or Hebrew through the use of the HarfBuzz text shaping plugin and a global variable that you can set with a particular script and language, and that would apply the proper text shaping to your text. However, some flaws with this implementation are that because the variable is global, when you set it, it applies to all of your text, even if it's not necessarily needed for a particular text render extension that doesn't need to use it. And you could also only specify one script and one language at a time. So it was kind of difficult to support maybe rendering multiple different languages at once. So to solve these problems, we've added a new plugin that will easily render bidirectional text without needing to specify any variables, and will do so at the text render extension level, meaning you can change, you can per render extension decide if you want to use this functionality or not. So as I mentioned, this bidirectional feature is implemented through a plugin. So if we take a look at the engine, inside the plugins folder of your engine, you should see libgre plugin Pango. So it's the Pango plugin named after the underlying library that we're using to perform the rendering. So as long as your runtime has this plugin, then you are supported for what I'm about to show. So if we go into Designer and take a look at some text here. So our text render extensions have a layout style property. And this layout style is what is going to determine how the text gets rendered. So there are a few different styles. So first you have fixed and free. So for non-bidirectional text, text that uses standard Latin characters, the fixed layout style provides an optimized rendering path at runtime for text that is not rotated or that is rotated at an orthogonal angle, so 90, 180, or 270 degrees. So the majority of your text is going to want to use the fixed layout style most likely, and it is the most performant at runtime. However, if you do need your text to be rotated at a non-orthogonal angle, then you would use the free layout style, which is not as performant, but that's just due to the nature of non-orthogonal rotation. So again, most of the time you're definitely going to want to be using fixed. However, in the case of bidirectional text that needs to be shaped properly, there is now the new bidirectional style. So this on your text render extension is what you're going to want to set for your Arabic and your Hebrew text. And because it's per render extension, you can specifically set one render extension to use this, and then have any others that don't stay on the fixed path, which just provides you a little bit more flexibility when you're deciding how to configure your text. So just to show an example, if I keep this set to fixed and I simulate my app here, so you can see this does not render correctly at all because I'm not using the right layout style. It's not actually going down into our new plugin to be shaped properly. However, if I set the layout style properly to bidirectional, and then I run again, our text is now shaped properly. It's going down into the Pango plugin, and it comes back correctly rendered. So a quick further note about fonts. So not every font is going to support Arabic and Hebrew text. So most of the fonts that are shipped in Storyboard, like Roboto and Inter, are not going to support this text. So you do need a specific font that is able to support these glyphs in order to use the bidirectional layout style. Mostly, for most of what you need, you should be able to find an appropriate font in the Noto font set from Google. So in this example, I'm using Cairo from Google, which does have the correct glyphs. But assuming you have the correct font and you have plugin support in your runtime, you can easily use this bidirectional layout to have your text shaped properly. And those are the standout features in Storyboard 9. So I'm going to send it back to Scott at this point to continue. Thanks.